Good evening everybody and welcome back to the League Racing TV YouTube channel for rounds 13 and 14 of the TTML Sprint League. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Carmensis. I'll be taking you through proceedings on a Wednesday night as always. And as always, joining me in the commentary box on a Wednesday evening is Luke Etheridge. Luke, how are you doing this evening?
I'm very well, Aidan. Good evening to you. Good evening to everyone who is watching us. Really looking forward to these two races around two extremely contrasting tracks, it has to be said.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Yeah, we've got Hungary and Belgium for tonight, as you can tell by the stream title and by the screen at the moment. Hungary is the first round of the night, and then round 14 in the second round tonight will be at Belgium at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And like you say, completely opposing tracks. Hungary, a lot of corners in quick succession, a fairly low-speed track, high downforce, not a lot of overtaking opportunities, and Spa, pretty much the complete opposite, overtaking left, front and centre, really, really high-speed track, and it's the longest track on the calendar. So a lot of things to look out for tonight, some contrasting races, and that could really affect how the dynamic works of the different drivers tonight, couldn't it?
Yeah, some drivers, it's natural to have certain tracks that you prefer, certain car setups you might feel like you cope yourself better with, and you're likely to have two very different ones. So it will be interesting to see, really to see how the drivers do, and we'll probably get two different types of races. Belgium, very straightforward to overtake with the DRS down the Kemmel straight, whereas Hungary, it's been described by many people as Monaco without the barriers, for good reason. Extremely difficult to overtake around this place.
Yeah, definitely is. One-shot qualifying for Hungary is going to be definitely a lot more important than it is for Belgium. So that's going to be one thing to look out for as we head into one-shot qualifying. Before we get going, though, just going to run you through the standings as of round 12 of the season. So Scuba is now our new championship leader on 189 points. He leads by only 3 points over Wesker in the second racing point. Perpetuum Mobile is third ahead of Tekken in fourth, and Graham rounds off the top five. Then behind him it is TTG Cam. TTG Maze is in seventh ahead of Dekeeper eighth, Coreboy ninth, and Faxland rounds off the top 10. And obviously we had a week's break in between these two rounds and the two rounds previous. So last time out, the winner in the Austrian Grand Prix was Tekken, and the winner in the British round was Scuba. So look out for those drivers tonight. Tekken picking up his first win of the season. We had Maze on the podium for the first time last time out in Britain as well. So a lot of things to look out for. And another thing to look out for tonight is a number of new participants to the Sprint League.
Yeah, we've got some extremely fast people have joined. Recon, for example, he's now joining in the Red Bull. We've also got the return of Machiro, who's only done two races so far this season, and he won one and finished second in the other from pole position. And I think if it wasn't for penalties, he'd have probably ended up taking a win in that. So he's extremely quick. We've got Nathan, Vettel, Dark KDM, bit of unknown in the Sprint League, Legacy as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope with the 25% race distance, because we have learned that the strategies are slightly different. You can't just straight half a strategy what you do in a 50%. The soft tyres do seem to last a bit longer, so it does make things slightly more interesting.
It definitely does. It is a completely different dynamic, and like you say, we don't know if any of these drivers have really experienced that dynamic before, so we'll have to wait and see. But we're going to go on board with Faxland for qualifying in the Williams. He's out off the back of a few good runs recently. He heads down into turn one here at the Hungaro ring, heading in everyone on the soft compound tyres, apart from, I believe we've got Recon on the medium, so look out for him in qualifying. See if he can get inside the top 10 on those medium tyres. Heading down towards turn two now, another long flowing hairpin, and then into turn three, easily flat out in qualifying and in the race. Got to make sure you take the right line, and then up the hill to the end of the first sector and turn four. By the end of the first sector, it's Machiro currently leading the way in qualifying. Not really much of a surprise there as you turn into turn five. A couple of stabs at turning in there from Faxland. Oh, and really loses the rear of the car on the exit. Manages to hold on to it as we head down into turn six and seven. Stay away from the sausage curbs. Faxland again, a really loose end to that car. He's not got a lot of grip in that car into this middle part of the lap now. Corner after corner after corner comes at you thick and fast. And Machiro's retired from the session. Looks like he might have invalidated at some point in that middle sector through 11. And again, Faxland, the rear of that car is all over the place, and somehow he ends up holding onto it, and he's kept the lap valid so far, so he'll hope to just get to the end of the lap as he spins coming through turn 12. What a disastrous lap it has been for Faxland. So we're going to ride on board with Scuba as he comes around the final corner, our current championship leader in the Red Bull, coming up to the line. Let's see what he can do. Can he get pole position? He doesn't. Cam gets it. They did exactly the same time. Wow, that is something I have never seen before, but Cam gets it on the count of maybe the fourth decimal point being lower than the third. But Cam and Scuba exactly the same lap time, but it's Cam that gets pole position yet again.
Yeah, fantastic performance from Cam. Amazingly, that is his fifth pole position of the season. He's had way more poles, I think, than most of the other drivers. just only converted one into a win so far. I was on board with Honey Badger for the end of that lap. He was actually a couple of attempts faster, but unfortunately for him, he'd invalidated, so he'll be starting near the back, but a great pole position from Cam, and Scuba must be feeling slightly aggrieved by that.
Yeah, he definitely would be. Championship leader, then second on the grid, but like you say, Cam, 5th pole position of the season. He has been the star of qualifying. Can he convert it into a race win? He never seems to do well in the first race of the evening, so maybe he can break that curse. Vettel 3rd place then, ahead of Siege in 4th. Nathan in 5th, ahead of Dark KDM in 6th. Recon on the mediums in 7th, so look out for him in the race. Graham 8th, Tekken 9th, and Legacy rounds off the top 10. Maze and Faxan, the only other people to set times. 2 very fast drivers. Honey Badger still yet to break his Wednesday curse, and Mashiro, who looked to be maybe at the front of qualifying, at the back of the grid. And at the back of the grid at Hungary, while these guys have got a lot of pace, it's still going to be very difficult then to make an impression in such a short race.
Yeah, we've not really seen Mashiro have to come from the back in either of the 2 races he was in. Honey Badger, sometimes he can be a bit too forceful in those early stages, or goes for some moves that some of the drivers, I think, further down aren't quite expecting, and there ends up to being a bit of contact. Around here, you've got to go for them. 2 DRS zones, but only the 1 detection point coming out of the final corner, and that gets you DRS on the run down to turn 1, which is where you'll probably see most of the overtaking, and then on the run to turn 2 as well, which does mean sometimes if you get the move done into turn 1, you get a nice little boost from the rear wing opening to help you defend that position into turn 2, but they'll be hoping to get the moves done early on. Interesting to see Recon qualify on the medium tyres and get into the top 10 on those mediums. Thinking of Perpetuum in some of the races he's done, he really seemed to enjoy that alternate strategy, so he's definitely going to be one to watch out for if he can make it work as effectively as the German has at various points this season.
Yeah, just under 9/10 of a second off pole position was Recon, so a really, really good lap on the medium tyres. And one thing to look out for around this track, yes, it is only a 25% race, but even so, overheating on these tyres can be very, very difficult to manage around Hungary. So many quick corners in succession with, well, barely any straights to separate them, apart from obviously the pit straight and the second DRS zone, and maybe the run to turn 4, but apart from that, there's not really any straights that you can really cool down your tyres on. So starting on the soft compound tyres is still going to be difficult even in a shorter race, because after maybe 2 or 3 laps, you're really going to start picking up some understeer.
Yeah, definitely. We already saw, well, you say picking up some understeer. I think Faxland wouldn't mind picking up a bit of understeer after that qualifying lap. He was really struggling. He must have absolutely cooked his rears, and that's another problem. If you do start getting a bit of cooked front tyres leading to understeer, or your rears leading into oversteer, you haven't really got time to get a rest all the way from that chicane at turn 6 and 7, pretty much towards the end of sector 2, so coming out of turn 11. There's no rest whatsoever for the tyres, so if you get a bit of heat into them, you're going to struggle. But also, if you're stuck behind a car that is on older tyres than yours, you can easily lose a second or 2 to the car in front, and that can be the difference. If you're no longer in the DRS, then it's very difficult to overtake.
It really, really is, yeah, and it's crucial. You need to get even think about a move down the pit straight. You have to get an incredible run out of the last corner, just because the run, really, the pit straight is so short. Even with the pit straight being so short, the run to turn 1 at the start of the race is one of the longest on the calendar. So you have to look out for that at the start of this race. That's probably going to be the best opportunity for these guys to make up positions. So I'm wondering whether we'll see maybe a little bit of carnage into turn 1, just because it is the best opportunity to make places.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if we see some of that. I think drivers will be going for it, especially later on. Watch out for those that are starting on the medium tyres, especially Honey Badger and Mashiro. I think we're going to see at least one of those get onto the podium at some point. I think they'll be able to work that strategy absolutely brilliantly, and we might get to a situation where Honey Badger's creating the gaps if he stays ahead, and Mashiro just manages to follow him through. Going to be very exciting to see how this race goes. Recon as well in 7th, obviously, on the mediums. I can't wait to get this race underway.
Yeah, me neither. Unfortunately, Dark KDM has left the session in the formation lap, so he's not going to be here for the start of this race. Qualified 6th. That is a real shame for Dark KDM, but unfortunately he won't take part. Hopefully he'll be back in the lobby maybe for the second race of tonight. But we're getting ready then for 18 laps around the Hungary ring here in Hungary. Who is going to get the best start off the front row of the grid? Can Cam break his first race of the evening curse, or can Scuba pick up yet another victory? It's lights out and away they go, and it's a fairly even start at the front of the field. Cam looks like he's got the better of the start. Scuba's trying to get alongside alongside, but just doesn't have the best of runs. They're fanning out 4 wide in the background, and Cam immediately goes to shut the door on Scuba into turn 1. Scuba tries to have a look down the inside, but there's just not enough room, and Cam holds the lead into turn 1 ahead of Scuba in second place. Vettel holds third, Nathan in fourth place then, and behind them we've got 2x2x2 down into turn 2, and we've got Mays working his way through as KDM's car drops towards the back of the field. Then up towards the end of the first sector, Scuba's coming back at Cam just a little bit up towards turn 4, but then from here it's corner after corner after corner, so Cam has done enough to hold on to the lead for the time being. Further back, Recon on those medium tyres has made a stunning start from 7th on the grid up to 5th on the medium. Siege now trying to make a move stick on Tekken as they go into the chicane, and Tekken forces him across the curve just a little bit, but they get away with it, and Tekken holds 6th place just ahead of Siege. Oh, and Siege has spun though off the side of his car and has broken his front wing, so Siege drops to the back of the field with a broken front wing. He's going to have to come in and put a set of medium tyres on to go to the end of the race. What a shame for Siege. He drops then to the back of the field. Fatsand goes up into 8th as Mashiro's trying to get a move done on Legacy down towards turn 12. He's down the inside on those medium tyres. Legacy's going to try and hold it around the outside, makes the inside for 13, but I think Mashiro's going to have the upper hand here. He does, and goes clean around the outside of turn 13 as Siege retires from the session. Then Mashiro up into 9th place on the medium tyres. He's had a stunning start on those mediums.
Yeah, he has. Fantastic start. I was on board with Siege, actually, and Recon managed to go around the outside of him at turn 4. I think Siege was very polite in letting Recon have that position, but in doing so, it just allowed Tekken to get all over the back of him. And then we saw that bit of contact between them, and I'm not quite sure what happened after that, but a shame for Siege. He's left the session, so I don't think he's too happy about the some of the driving he's seen. Be interesting to see whether any of that goes to the stewards. Honey Badger has managed to work his way past Mays at this moment in time. Cam, though, still leading the race. Him and Scuba trying to get away from Vettel, it looks like, in the early stages. And if they can break that 1 second window, might see them work together ever so slightly just to extend the lead. Then it might be hard for even those medium runners to catch up later in the race.
Yeah, this is exactly what Recon does not need at the moment. Currently 5th place behind 2 drivers in front, Vettel and Nathan, who are holding their own quite nicely at the moment on the soft tyres. They're definitely not slow by any stretch of the imagination, so they're going to be difficult for Recon to get close to and overtake. But like you say, the top 2 starting to just disappear a little bit into the distance. Scuba is a little bit all over the back of Cam though at this point in the race. I'm wondering whether Cam is already started to struggle with the heat in his tyres. Scuba's right underneath him at a track with a lot of corners in quick succession. He's doing a good job of sticking right to the rear of that gearbox, and he might have a run maybe down towards turn 1. DRS is enabled on this lap, so Scuba hasn't got it just yet, but he just set the fastest lap of the race at 17.4, currently in second place. They are just over a second ahead of Vettel, who currently runs in 3rd place. Nathan 4th. Recon rounds off the top 5, and then it's Tekken and Graham fighting for 6th and 7th. Faxland 8th with Mashiro right behind him. Mashiro trying to get a move done, and Honey Badger passes his runner teammate Legacy and is up into 11th place. So whatever Mashiro does, Honey Badger can do the same, and Honey Badger's now inside the top 10. At the moment though, the one we've got to keep an eye on has got to be Mashiro. He's absolutely flying.
Yeah, it is. We'll see how he does now. He's got himself into that bit of a DRS train behind. It's currently Tekken at the moment. He's got Graham, Faxland, then it is Mashiro, Honey Badger, Legacy and Mays. Fairly good teamwork from the Renault drivers. Legacy, I think, realised his teammate was behind him on a better strategy. Just lifted off on the way into turn 1, allowed him to get that overtake done. It turns out that Dark KDM, unfortunately, his internet seems to have completely gone. So hopefully for him, he'll be able to get himself maybe even back in this race, if not, at least back for the next one and get himself a chance of scoring some points, because he had a fairly decent qualifying session. Going back to the leaders, I am surprised how well Scuba is doing in keeping that car to the back of Cam at the moment. You'd be expecting Scuba to be struggling a lot more with the tyre temperatures, just stuck in the dirty air and not getting that same amount of cool air and same amount of downforce, of course. He might even have a chance here down towards turn 1 to take the lead of the race. Yeah, it's going to have a look to the inside. Cam moves to the middle of the road though, and moves back a little bit towards the racing line for the braking zone, but gives Scuba just enough room. Scuba trying to maybe get a better exit out of turn 1. Cam trying to break the toe down towards 2 and is again moving to the inside of the track. Scuba's going to try and fight his way all the way around the outside of turn 2, which become the inside for 3. He's got his nose up the inside. Cam's going to have to leave him the space. They go side by side through 3, but Cam gets the better run out of the corner, and Cam is just going to hold on up towards turn 4. Great racing though between those two. Scuba can't get the move done, and while all this is happening, Vettel is slowly but surely closing in on the back of them in that racing point. He has dropped Nathan just a little bit, and Recon can't get moved on the Ferrari driver just yet either. So at the moment, the more that Cam and Scuba start to battle, it brings Vettel right into play. Yeah, and of course Nathan, and what could be most importantly on those medium tyres, allows Recon back into it, because I imagine at this point he's going to have the better tyres. Further down the field, one of the Alfa Romeos lost a place, and that was Tekken getting overtaken by Graham, while one gained a place. Machiro managed to get ahead of his teammate, and it looks like he's going to go down the inside here at turn 12, very late on the brakes. Tekken is not giving up. He's got some confidence after taking his first win last time around. He's just, I think, going to drop outside of DRS range, as we are seeing a couple of pit stops then. Nathan and Cam coming into the pits. Mashiro's going to have the DRS, so this should be a fairly straightforward move, but you imagine Faxland might try to get himself involved in this as well. Could even try and make it 3 wide on the run down to turn 1, just hasn't got the ERS to do so. Mashiro up into 5th place. He's gone a bit deep though. Faxland trying to take advantage while all this is happening, and you got Honey Badger not too far behind as well.
Well, nearly 3 wide into turn 2 as Tekken tries to go back down the inside of Fatsland, but he just doesn't have the grip. And now Honey Badger trying to get the move done maybe through 3, but isn't close enough. Honey Badger has almost all of his ERS left, so if he used it, he could probably breeze past his drivers in front. All 3 of them at the moment down below 10% of ERS, so Honey Badger just waiting in the wings maybe for at least Tekken to come into the pit lane, but he might not even need to wait that long. He's down the inside for turn 6, but just can't get the move done. And now Honey Badger is going to get stuck in this middle sector, and that's exactly what he does not need. He doesn't want to allow Faxand and Mashiro to get up the road. He needs to stick with them as it stands. Mashiro up into 5th place, and Tekken our first person with a time penalty, so got to look out for that in this race. It's fairly easy to pick up warnings around this circuit. A lot of places where you can run wide, and the track limits around Budapest are relatively brutal, to be honest, so got to look out for that one in this race. Honey Badger still all over the back of that second Alfa Romeo. You would imagine he's probably going to get that move done fairly easily if Tekken isn't coming into the pit lane, which he is. So Tekken is in along with Graham, Vettel and Scuba. Recon then takes the lead of the race and sets the fastest lap of the race in the process, so he's got some clean air in front to use those mediums. It's now all about the pace of the other drivers around him on the medium tyres, and how far can Recon get into this race.
Yeah, most certainly. We'll get an idea of just about how ruined those softs were maybe on Scuba's car. We'll see how he comes out relative to Cam. And you can see Cam's got that momentum and gets himself back into, well, I think he was in the lead of this race anyway, wasn't he? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he just held on to the lead, so he's not really gained anything with that undercut, but he's not really lost a lot. So maybe Scuba got it just right, pitting on the lap that he did.
Maybe he did, yeah. Maybe, like I said earlier on, that Cam was just struggling with the overheating, and Scuba didn't seem to have the same problem because he was just tucked right underneath the rear ring of that McLaren in the middle sector, where you would expect the dirty air to have some sort of effect on Scuba's car. So at this point in the race, it does seem like Scuba is a little bit better at managing his tyre temperatures, but they now go onto a harder set of tyres, and that should help Cam out a little bit more. So maybe Cam might be a little bit less under pressure at this point in the race with these tyres on. We'll have to wait and see. Still a long way to go in this race, not even a half distance in this race yet, so a lot can still happen. Vettel's lost a little bit of time. He's just outside of DRS to Scuba in front of him, and Nathan's just outside of DRS to Vettel in front of him. So now it all depends on where Recon comes out, and again Recon, I believe, with another fastest lap of the race as he crosses the line in that Red Bull, doing a lovely job on those medium tyres. It's now all about his pace, so when he comes into the pit lane, you would imagine he's probably going to come out around about where Nathan is, which is where he was before the stops happened. But you've got to say that Recon, if he wants to have any chance of a podium, if he does come into the pit lane and comes out behind Nathan, he's got to get the moves done almost instantly to have any opportunity.
Yeah, he's going to have to be pretty forceful. We saw turn 1 is a possibility on the brakes, maybe into that chicane at turn 6 and 7, just because the car in front of you will not have the DRS. It will be very difficult, though, to follow around turn 5. He's not losing a lot of time at the moment to Cam. He was less than a tenth slower than the McLaren driver, who is, of course, the lead out of all those that have pitted already. So his pace is fairly good at the moment. He can definitely get a few more laps out of these tyres. I imagine, just judging by the soft stints that we've seen, he'll be having to go to at least lap 12 to get a good set of tyres towards the end of the race. And you would expect by that point he might have lost a bit of time. What could affect him is just how close can Vettel and Nathan stay to the back of Cam and Scuba. If he can get out ahead of one of those, or ahead of both of them, he'd have a really good chance, of course, of taking the victory. It will be a bit tougher, though, if he's stuck behind the Racing Point and the Ferrari for a good number of laps.
And you've got to say at the moment, Vettel's definitely doing a better job at sticking with Scuba than Nathan is. Nathan just doesn't seem that comfortable on the medium tyres as he was on the softs, maybe with the harder compound, not giving him a lot of balance at this point in the race. He's just dropping off the back of the Racing Point ever so slightly. So if Recon does come out behind Nathan, you would imagine that Nathan's going to be relatively easy meat for Recon. It's just whether when he gets to the back of Vettel, is Vettel maybe close enough to the back of Scuba and Cam to get DRS. So Scuba's going for the move on Cam into turn 1, really late on the brakes, and Cam reads that beautifully, cuts back up the inside on the exit of the corner. Reed takes that net race lead, but Scuba again trying to go all the way around the outside of turn 2, going to make it the inside for turn 3, and again we've got a similar situation, but Scuba is a little bit further ahead. They're still fighting on the way up to turn 4. Scuba is going to have to try and get ahead at the turning point, and he does. Scuba with a brilliant move around the outside of 2 and up the inside of 3, a textbook move around Budapest. Scuba pulls it off and he's into the net race lead. Now he's got to try and get away from Cam.
Yeah, importance of ERS management right there. Cam just was clipping on his way up coming out of turn 3, so had nothing to fight that with. That allowed Scuba to get far enough ahead. We've already seen Scuba set the fastest lap of the race previously. We'll now get to see him maybe in a bit more free air. He is starting to catch up to Honey Badger, who has actually dropped off the back of this pack all of a sudden and dropped behind Maze. We seem to have missed something happening to the Renault driver, because he wasn't too far behind Faxland, and all of a sudden he's 5 seconds behind him, and even behind Maze. It doesn't look to have any damage on his car, or at least any major damage. There might be a tiny chip missing out of his front right end plate, but that's very worrying for Honey Badger. Of course, with his strategy, he'd want to be right up where Machero are, otherwise it could be a long fight up through the field. And you can see again Scuba with another fastest lap of the race. He is definitely pushing at the moment and definitely closing that gap to Recon, who, if he pitted now, I think would still just come out ahead of Nathan, but would be behind Vettel, who, if he can, needs to try to get within a second of Cam and then use the DRS, of course, to help drag him along, maybe help him save a bit of fuel and a bit of ERS for an attack later in this race.
Yeah, that's definitely crucial to Vettel's opportunity of getting on the podium. Meanwhile, with Honey Badger, I did catch the end of him facing the wrong way at turn 2, so I'm wondering whether he maybe came into contact with Faxland, as who was close with at the time. So I don't know if he's come into contact with Faxland, maybe trying to overtake him, or whether he's simply spun on his own, but he was facing the wrong way at turn 2, which is why he is further down the field. And again, that Wednesday curse is coming back to bite Honey Badger, and you can tell he's just struggling a little bit now on those tyres after that half spin. Maybe just a little bit overheated, and he can't really bring the temperatures back down. He's not closing in massively on Maze in front, and Scuba on those fresh mediums, as you would expect, is closed right in on the back of the Renault. Now Scuba's got to try and get this move done so that he can get further up the field, because this is crucial to Scuba's race, especially if Recon comes out on a fresh set of softs and is fast. But Scuba doesn't have any ERS to attack with. Honey Badger has all the ERS in the world to defend with. Is Scuba going to go for a late lunge maybe at turn 1? No, he's not. He's going to sit in behind, but he's almost pushing Honey Badger through turn 1, so maybe he's going to get a good run down towards turn 2. Honey Badger keeps it on the racing line. Scuba maybe is going to look to the inside line, but again, the braking distance for turn 2 is just too shallow, and the straight's not long enough, so Scuba can't get the move done on Honey Badger, and this could really, really play crucial in Scuba's race.
Yeah, and Honey Badger, again, he's done a fantastic job of managing his ERS, so if he wants to, I feel like he's got enough to defend from Scuba. It's just up to Honey Badger whether he decides that he wants to at the moment, and they're starting to catch up to me, so that's going to give the Renault driver the DRS as well. This could be really costly for Scuba. Good news for Vettel is that it's allowed him to close up to the back of Cam, who's actually nearly dropped to within a well, outside of a second, I should say, of the back of the Red Bull. Yeah, things getting really interesting at the moment. Recon and Machero just doing their own thing at the moment. Recon in the lead of this race. Machero is currently a further 6.4 seconds behind, and Faxland a further 6 seconds behind him. And then you've got this battle with Maze, Honey Badger, and then the top 3 out of those that have pitted, as Maze is actually coming into the pits. So Honey Badger, he will have DRS this time around, and that's just going to make it even more awkward, of course, for Scuba.
Yeah, he's going to go for another move, maybe down towards turn 1, but look, Honey Badger's using some of his ERS and actually pulled away from Scuba in a straight line there. So Honey Badger doing enough into turn 1 to keep that position. Maze then onto the soft compound tyres, maybe a little bit early, end of lap 10. That is a long way to go on a set of soft compound tyres. So Scuba, again, trying to get the run down towards turn 2, but just can't get the move done. It's just not a long enough straight, and he doesn't have the ERS to pull it off. Honey Badger not doing anything really in need of defence. He doesn't actually even need to defend any lines. He's just sticking to the racing line and doing what he needs to do in this race. Scuba just can't get close enough at this point. Honey Badger picks up a 3-second time penalty on the outside of turn 4. That is the second driver in this race to do that. So Honey Badger still running in 4th place, and like I said, just not needing to defend. It's just Scuba can't get close enough. Yeah,
and I imagine at some point soon this is really going to start costing Scuba. His fastest lap in this race is a 1:16.4. His last lap was a 1:17.8. It was actually slower than Recon's last lap, who now comes into the pits, and I imagine will come out ahead of Nathan and just behind what's happening with Honey Badger, Scuba, Cam and Vettel. Although I think, judging by the fact that everyone else seems to be diving towards the pits, we might soon... No, actually, Honey Badger decides that he's staying out another lap, of course, and that's just going to frustrate Scuba even more. He looks as though he saved a tiny bit of ERS, and he might be close enough this time. Those tyres might have finally gone on the Renault car, so this is a chance for Scuba down the inside into turn 1. And he takes that position, and he will have the DRS to help him defend that. Now Cam, he's got to try and get past the Renault driver as quickly as possible, otherwise he could drop outside of DRS range. Thinks about a move down the inside into turn 2, and to be fair, Honey Badger has given him space. Has he got the grip to hold on to this? He's going to be on the outside, and Cam takes that position. A crucial move from the McLaren driver to get himself up into second place. Otherwise, I think he could have dropped possibly around 2 seconds behind the Red Bull. Now he's still on the back of his tail. Just needs to save a bit of ERS for both of these drivers. We could see a very good battle for the lead. And I said Recon would come out behind Vettel. I wasn't expecting him to be this close to the back of the racing point. This might, if he can work his way through the field, this might just be fairly straightforward for him to get past these cars and then breeze to a victory.
Yeah, and the good thing for him at the moment is that Vettel is getting held up behind Honey Badger now, so that's going to detach Vettel from the top 2, which not only makes Vettel easier meet, but when he gets past, it makes Cam easier meet when he gets to the back of him. So we'll have to wait and see. It's actually having a look down the inside of 13, but just wasn't enough room there for the move. Recon with so much more pace at this point in time. He's got to get it done quickly, though, on those softs before they start going off. He's got to do 7 laps on the softs, and no one can get further than 6 at the start of the race. So it's going to be, those tyres are definitely not going to be at their best by the end of this race. Recon going to go for a move on Vettel as Vettel goes around the outside of Honey Badger, and Recon dives up the inside of Honey Badger, tries to go down the inside of Vettel at the same time as well. Little bit of wheel scraping there on the exit of the corner, but Vettel is just about going to hold on to the place into 2, but Recon dives it down the inside, locks up. Vettel locks up in the process as well, trying to avoid Recon's car, and just runs wide at turn 2. Recon is up into 3rd place, gets past Honey Badger and Vettel in 2 corners. Good move from Recon, and he's already within DRS range of Cam in front, so Recon looking odds-on favourite maybe to win this race, as Mashiro has already caught the back of Nathan.
Yeah, great move by Recon. Great awareness as well, though, by the racing point of Vettel to realise when he was going around the outside of Honey Badger that Recon was there on the inside. It would have been very easy to head towards the apex of that corner, end up chopping across the Red Bull, spinning yourself out, and probably costing the Red Bull his front wing. But you can see here, Recon's got a fantastic run as we've had a spin further back. I think that's Legacy. He's trying to go down the inside at turn 12. I'm not sure there's a lot Cam is going to be able to do here. Recon's using a lot of his ERS because he's just so determined to get ahead of these guys. And there we go. Recon now up into second place. He's just, though, I think, dropped outside of DRS range. So this might still get a bit tasty into turn 1.
Yes, Cam going to try and get this move back as Recon does a 15.6. What a lap. Overtaking 3 drivers on that lap and still setting the fastest lap of the race. Honey Badger finally into the pits, and Cam just doesn't have enough in a straight line to go for a move on Recon. But yeah, Recon caught Cam so quickly in that middle sector as Faxan now sets the fastest lap of the race as he tries to close in on Nathan. Mashiro, meanwhile, has made the move stick on Nathan as well and is up into 5th place and is only 3.6 seconds off the back of Vettel, so it's not out of the question just yet. Then Mashiro could still battle for maybe that final spot on the podium. Cam and Vettel have been dispatched off very quickly by Recon. Who's to say Mashiro can't do the same?
Yeah, that's very true indeed. Who's to say, with the pace that these soft tyres have to show, if someone like Nathan gets a penalty, maybe we could even see Faxland get himself further up. He's going to need a penalty, I imagine, to do that, and he's going to need to keep it clean. But he's dispatched Graham fairly comfortably and has got his way through. Who's to say Mays could even move up maybe and take Tekken and possibly take Graham, as Mashiro does get a penalty though. That shows how hard he is having to push at the moment. That might just make it a bit more difficult to get himself a podium. Meanwhile, at the lead of the race, just over 5 laps to go, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot Scuba can do about here. I think if Recon decides to send it, he's just going to have the grip to make it successful.
Yeah, he's on the overtake almost before we got out of the corner as he comes out of turn 14 and down the pit straight, and Scuba's choosing not to defend it. Recon goes to the inside line, completely runs out of ERS and moves back onto the racing line before the corner, and Scuba just can't do anything about it. So Recon on the alternate strategy is up into the race lead. He passes his Red Bull teammate, takes the lead of the race with 4 laps to go, and from here on out you've got to say it's going to be fairly easy for Recon to hold on to that unless his tyres completely fall off a cliff. But even if they do, I think it just has a significant pace advantage over the drivers behind him at the moment. And Cam coming back under pressure from Vettel. So again, Cam seems to be struggling at this point with his tyre temperatures, because Vettel was over a second back and has immediately caught the back of that McLaren very, very quickly. So Cam, again, first race of the evening, just doesn't seem to go Cam's way.
No, he had a pretty good start. He just, like you said, maybe just struggling a bit with the tyre temperatures. Nathan now picks up a penalty, so we said that could help Faxland. That's a net. All of a sudden, the gap is now a net 2.5 seconds. We've not seen Vettel have a chance at Cam, really, when Cam's had the DRS every single time. So this could be it, as Honeybadger has retired from the session. He looks as though he's had a huge moment coming out of, I'd imagine that's coming out of turn 4, and then on the way into turn 5, he's not been under control, and as soon as he's hit the brakes, possibly on the grass, he's just lost the position. But again, that Wednesday curse that we keep talking about, at some point, he's got to try and find a way to break that. Another fastest lap from Recon, he's checked out. The big battle we're now interested in is Cam and Vettel, and can Mashiro. He's got penalties, but he could still get involved in this and could even take a third position out on track.
He could, and if he breaks this battle up a little bit and maybe tries to get ahead of maybe Vettel or Cam, he could cause them to fall a little bit further back, and maybe they might make a mistake and pick up a penalty themselves. So Vishiro is not out of this one. Only 1.8 seconds is the gap. Meanwhile, Faxland is cruising up to the back of Nathan. The gap is already 4.5 seconds. I think he might have been something like 2.2 seconds faster than Nathan on that previous lap. So Faxland is absolutely flying on that set of soft compound tyres, and Nathan's just become detached ever since he put those mediums on. He's just not looked as comfortable and has just become detached from the back of Vettel. Still running a decent 6th place though is Nathan. He'll be pretty happy at the moment, but Faxland is putting that 6th place under a little bit of pressure. Vettel still on the back of Cam, trying to get the move done, but there's obviously no room really in the middle part of the lap to think about an overtake, so he's just got to try and stick as close as he can to the back of Cam. You've got to say, you've got to be within 0.3 of a second of Cam to really have a go down into towards turn 1, and at this point in time, Vettel doesn't quite look close enough, and Mashiro, crucially, is going to have DRS this time round.
Yeah, it's whether he's still got the grip on those tyres to get a move done. We can see Recon can use the grip of his tyres to pull away. It's going to be slightly different just to try and get that overtake done all of a sudden. We've seen Mays catch up to the back of Tekken fairly quickly, but again, it's having that grip in their tyres to be able to get the move done on the brakes into turn 1. Like you said, Vettel wasn't close enough to Cam to get a move. We knew Mashiro wouldn't be, but this might just give Vettel the hurry up that he needs now that he's got the Alfa Romeo breathing all over his neck, and he's only going to have 2 laps remaining to do it. Down into turn 1, you've got to say it's probably his only realistic opportunity, as both him and Cam run wide into turn 4, and in fact Vettel's had a terrible exit through 5 there. Mashiro right behind the rear wing of that racing point. We're seeing a few more mistakes from these drivers on the medium tyres. We were saying maybe the guys on the softs pitted too early to go to the soft tyres. Maybe these on the mediums now pitted a bit too early, because they do look to be struggling.
Yeah, they definitely do, and Vettel again locking up into the chicane. It's in that a couple of times from Vettel now, under pressure, maybe brakes a little bit too late and locks that front tyre. So he did that into the chicane, got away with it, but that just goes to show that either he's struggling or he is just under a lot of pressure. And again, a big lock up into turn 13 for Vettel, who's now a little bit detached to the back of Cam. He's still crucially within DRS range, but he's nowhere near close enough to challenge the back of that McLaren. But Mashiro gets a really, really poor run out of the final corner, so I don't think Mashiro is going to be close enough and doesn't have the ERS to really close in on the back of him. Further back, Faxland is nearly within that 3-second window of Nathan in front. It's a 10th out at this point in the race, and Mays is still trying to get a move done on Tekken, but just can't find a gap at this point in time. Further back up though, Cam still holds on to 3rd. Vettel just not close enough as we're onto the final lap of the race, and Recon in the lead of the race now, just kind of cruising towards the end.
Yeah, just making sure he doesn't do any silly mistakes. Pick up a penalty, obviously, because that would be really costly for him, and just take a victory. A fantastic victory on debut after choosing to go for those medium tyres and keeping it clean on his lap as well. Who knows what could have happened if Honeybadger and Mashiro hadn't invalidated / crashed. Good comeback from Mashiro, definitely. He's going to get a 5th place. Whether he'd have been able to fight a bit harder at the front of this race, we'll never know, but you have to imagine that he would have been up there with Scuba. And you've got to say Faxland doing a much better job in this lap than he was in qualifying, when his setup just looked all over the place.
Yeah, definitely maybe more set up to the race conditions where he could have been maybe without that. He's looked pretty fast, especially in the second half of the race, but Recon's going to come round the final corner, and he's going to pick up his first win in the Sprint League on debut. What a drive from Recon on the alternate strategy. Scuba's going to extend his championship lead, though, in 2nd place, and Cam does get that 3rd place on the podium. Vettel has to settle for 4th, and Mashiro has to settle for 5th. Nathan's going to cross the line in 6th, but Faxland has done just enough to get that 6th place off of him on penalties. Nathan then drops to 7th. Graham, a fairly lonely race for him in the end. He's going to cross the line in 8th place. Tekken is just about going to hold on track at least to Mays for 9th place, but Mays will jump ahead of him on penalties, so Mays gets that 9th place. Tekken rounds off the top 10. Legacy will be the last finisher in 11th place. Start KDM has lagged out of the session, and Honeybadger and Siege, 2 big names, retiring from the race at fairly different stages for fairly different reasons. Legacy then crosses the line and he takes 11th place. And Recon, what a debut from him. First win of the season on debut, and I think that's the first driver to do that.
Yeah, fantastic job from him, and I think maybe it was very crucial in that race when we saw Honey Badger just holding up Scuba for those 2 laps. It cost Scuba at least a second a lap. Who knows whether by the time Recon had caught up, he'd have had enough tyres to hold on, and maybe we'd have seen Scuba go for a move later on. But still a good result, obviously, for the Red Bull team. It is a 1-2 as they try to work their way up the Constructors' Championship order, and Scuba, an 8th podium from the 9 races that he's taken part in. He'll be very happy with that.
He definitely will, and the good thing for Scuba here is that the 2 closest drivers to him in the championship, Westgate and Perpetuum, aren't here today, and the closest person to him on track that's in the top 10 in the points was Cam, who is 6th in the standings. So Scuba's going to massively extend his championship lead going into Belgium, and who knows, he could do the same thing in Belgium as well. But here are your finishers for the first round of the evening and round 13 of the season. Recon takes the race victory ahead of Scuba in 2nd place. Cam picks up 3rd place. Unfortunately, not able to win on the first round of the evening yet again for Cam. He'll be maybe a little bit disappointed, but happy to still hold on to that podium place. Vettel ends up in 4th ahead of Mashiro from 14th, and last on the grid gets 5th place ahead of Vaxland in 6th. Nathan 7th, Graham 8th, Mays 9th, and Tekken rounds off the top 10. Legacy the only other finisher in 11th. Duck KDM lagged out the session. Honey Badger and Siege retired at different stages in the race, so they won't pick up any points for that. So while Scuba may be disappointed that he didn't pick up the race victory, his championship lead now is going to have extended massively.
Oh yeah, definitely. Such a consistent performance from him. Decisive move on Cam, perhaps, because we saw how hard it was at the end of the race when Vettel looked to have the pace to catch up to the back of Cam just once he got close. That lack of grip in the tyres meant he wasn't able to overtake. And I suppose we sort of saw that on the end of the soft stint where Scuba was all over the back of Cam. He just didn't have that grip differential to get the move done. We saw how important timing your overtakes was around Hungary. In Belgium, it's all about the DRS. If you get a fantastic run coming out of Eau Rouge and Radion, you don't want to be too close out of La Source, because if you have to lift off all of a sudden, then you lose all your momentum and you could be vulnerable to moves behind. This should be a really good race. Strategy, obviously, oh so important. Nowhere near as heavy on the tyres as Hungary. Strategy always important. Soft mediums, the only tyres we always see in the Sprint League. There might even be a few accidents. You never know.
Yeah, who knows? And we could see anything really in this race, and obviously with a completely different nature of track, we could see different drivers at the front of the field. It's more high speed, low downforce circuit instead of the high downforce, low speed track we just had. And one thing as well, maybe Recon at Budapest realised that if you're running the same strategies as everyone else around you, it's going to be fairly difficult to make those moves stick. So we knew he had to go for something a little bit different so that he could get those moves done, and it actually worked out beautifully for him in the end, and he got on with it. Scuba was really the only one that was on the same strategy as the drivers around him that was actually able to make an overtake. So just goes to show how difficult it is if you're all running the same strategy to try and improve yourself in the field. But come to Spa, and that's a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it? With so many overtaking opportunities, that run down the Kemmel straight on the first lap, and every lap as well, and the run down to the bus stop. This should be a really, really, really great race to watch. And who do you predict is going to be at the front of the field this time round?
Well, I think with the performance that we've just seen from Recon, we can't really count him out. Again, though, it's a very easy track to invalidate yourself on. Coming out of Bruxelles into No Name is where you see quite a lot of drivers sometimes run wide. You see it through Pouhon as well. Sometimes in the race, you'll probably see it at Blanchimont when you're in the dirty air, but I doubt you'll see it that much in qualifying. But yeah, I can't look past Recon after that performance. Scuba always seems to do fantastically well all season. He's only once been off the podium, and Cam tends to do better in the second race than he does the first. I don't know whether that's because we just expect too much from him in the first race, but I'm just looking through his performances in the second race. He won in Bahrain, he got a second in China, he wasn't there for Spain, he got a second in Azerbaijan, his 7th in France is the only time he's not been on the podium in race 2, and it's the only time he's done worse than race 1, so maybe watch out for Cam in this one.
Yeah, we'll have a look and see what he can do. Faxander we're going to run on board with once again in qualifying. We've got more people now on the medium tyres. We've got Tekken and Legacy doing a lap on the medium tyres around the longest track on the calendar, so look out for that. Faxander then out of the La Source hairpin and then down towards Eau Rouge and up through Radion then at the start of the lap. He keeps it to the left-hand side to try and get rid of try and keep as much speed in the car up the hill. Now down the Kemmel straight and into the chicane at the end of the straight, then heading into Les Combes. Brakes very, very late. A 30 flat at the end of the first sector. It's Recon at the front of the field at the moment. And now into Malmedy. And then down this hill into a very tricky braking zone for Beau Rivage. Let's see what he can do down the hill. Big lock up actually on the inside of that corner. Runs a little bit wide. Gets it nicely into the right-hand side for the corner with no name. Keeps it on the track as well. Doesn't invalidate that. Cam might have invalidated at that very corner and has retired. Now through Pool 1, probably the more difficult track on the calendar, and a lot of understeer there from Faxland, and he's invalidated and gone straight into the wall. So Faxland is out of this qualifying session. So we're going to go on board with Recon as he goes through the campus chicane and down towards Stavalo. A little bit of a wobble midway through the chicane, but gets away with it into Stavalo. Then a 90 right-hander. Keep it on the track, and then through the flat-out curveball Frere, especially in qualifying conditions, easily flat out. Recon trying to keep it to the right-hand side for the shortest run as we head now down towards Blanchimont. Easily flat this left-hander. To keep it away from the curb on the inside because it can spin the car out. Don't invalidate on the exit. No problem whatsoever for Recon as he heads to the braking zone for the final two corners of the bus stop chicane. Don't take too much curb because that can unsettle the car. Recon really losing the rear of the car under braking there, but out of the corner it's going to be Recon on pole position as he crosses the line miles ahead of the competition. Look at that lap, 0.8 of a second faster than anyone else. That is a marker laid down by Recon.
Anytime in the 140s is top class. A fantastic performance there from Recon. Those on the alternate strategy seem to struggle right from the start. Tekken and Legacy, all credit, we won't probably expect them to be right up the front anyway. I think Honey Badger invalidating quite late on, and Cam maybe putting the commentator's curse on Cam, but that's 2 invalidations in 2 sessions from Honey Badger, and again he's going to have to try and fight his way up. Scuba in 3rd place, right up there again. You'd be expecting him to have a good race, and we'll see if Siege can recover. We'll see if Siege can actually make it past lap 1 this time.
We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, rest of the grid then is Neymar, Graham, Nathan, Mays, Tekken rounds off the top 10 on the mediums, and Legacy the only other person to sell a lap time. Faxland also invalidated in both qualifying sessions today, so he's at the back of the field. But like you say, they've got to work their way through, but it is going to be a bit easier to work your way through around this track. This track is wider, and there's a lot more overtaking opportunities, so hopefully for them it will be a bit easier to work their way through the field. And again, Scuba, while he's not the fastest at the moment, still a great opportunity for him to extend his championship lead going into the next 2 rounds of the season. And one thing to look out for as well is maybe if Vettel can get that podium.
Yeah, it came really close last time. I do think if it had been a track more like Belgium and he'd have had similar pace compared to Cam, he might have been able to get that move done. But we'll have to see how he does this time around. We'll see if those outside the top 10 go for the mediums this time. We might have a bit more of a mix than we did at Hungary, but I still expect the majority of the 4 to go for those medium tyres, especially seeing as Tekken and Legacy both try to qualify on them. This should be really good. It'll also be interesting to see the setups for drivers have gone for. Sector 1 and Sector 3 at Belgium, as you could tell from that lap, really all about flat-out speed. Big braking zones, one in each sector really, for La Source and for the bus stop chicane. Whereas Sector 2, you need that downforce on your car. So if you're at the front of the field, you generally add a bit more downforce because you expect to be at the front. If you're further down, you might strip it off ever so slightly. Know that you're struggling in the corners, but give yourself a fantastic opportunity to overtake in just with the straight line speed advantage you have.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of it's a case of taking the compromise where you see fit and where you're more comfortable with. So we have to look out for that in this race. Who's got the best car in a straight line? People on the mediums and outside the top 10 are only Honey Badger and Faxan. Legacy's gone for the softs, and Cam has also gone for the soft compound tyres. Imagine, especially with Cam, he'll probably want to try and get as many places as he can in the opening stages of this race so that he can start to work his way through the field a little bit further on in the race. And one thing to look out for here, you mentioned it a bit earlier, the tyre wear around this track is far less of a worry than it is at Budapest. But we saw at Budapest the soft compound tyres had such a pace advantage on the mediums. Around here the soft tyres are going to have that pace advantage and not necessarily the deficit of wearing off too much, so maybe the soft compound tyres will be the better ones to be on.
Yeah, definitely. Legacy and Cam, like you said, have gone for those soft tyres. Cam clearly thinking, I've got some decent pace. I do not want to be stuck behind cars that I think I'm faster than. So he's going to want to work his way probably past at least up to Mays and Nathan maybe before he comes into the pits on just pure pace alone, and then see what he can do on the medium tyres. It's interestingly as well, Mays seems to be taking his formation like very chilled compared to the 8 cars ahead of him. The entire length for the straight between Pujon and Campus there was completely empty. So I wonder whether that's a bit of a tactic just to cool down the tyres and the brakes of those in front, because it's not a big braking zone into La Source, but you don't really put any load through your tyres until you get to this middle sector of the lap, and you don't want to be going into Lacombe with the cold brakes.
No, you definitely don't. I don't know if it's more Maze slowing down or the front 8 being really fast. Recon was doing 185 miles an hour down towards Blanchimont, so he was going nearly at full pelt. So he's trying to obviously get some heat into his tyres, but in doing that, he's going to be waiting on the grid for a long time. He's still got drivers coming through Blanchimont. He's still got Cam coming round there. Maze has disqualified himself from the lap, so he's going to be starting maybe with a little bit colder tyres than he would have wanted. Still waiting then for Faxland and Cam to come out of the last corner and line themselves up on the grid. So Luke, I'm going to hand over to you for the start of the second race of the evening.
And hopefully it will be a fantastic second race of the evening. We've got a bit of a mix of strategies. We've got the man who won on his debut on the alternate strategy. This time he's gone for the straightforward strat, and he's on pole position, getting himself those bonus 2 points. Championship leader is directly behind him in that third position on the grid. And we've got Michero on the front row as well. We've got 5 lights here at Belgium. The race is underway. What are the starts like? Looks like a fairly good start then from Recon. Scuba trying to get alongside Machero into turn 1, so this might be an opportunity for the Red Bull team to have a 1-2 on the run down out of La Source. I think Machero's just been able to get the grip there. There's a spinner in the background. I think that was Maze who's facing the wrong direction, but it's Recon in the lead. Machero just about holding on to that second place. Now Scuba in third, and this is why it's perhaps not the most advantageous thing to get pole position here, because you're just going to see Machero close onto the back of Recon. Scuba's going to try and get involved in all of this as well, and Recon just about holding on to that first position. Scuba going all the way around the outside of the first part of Lacombe. Is he going to be able to hold on to the position? No, he is not. Into Malmedy. Machero just gets that position, and Vettel's now going to have a fantastic run. See if he can go around the outside of Bruchel. Plenty of battling here. Maze is able to continue. Does look to be suffering from a lot of understeer. Can't quite tell from the camera angle I've got, but wouldn't surprise me if he has got big front wing damage. Siege has got a run on Vettel there into Puhon, not able to take advantage of this, and all this battling that we are seeing is allowing Recon to build a big lead on lap 1 of this race. Only 11 laps, of course, because of the length of the longest track on the calendar at just over 7 kilometres. Recon still in the lead. Machero second. Scuba in third position. No changes in the top 5. Nathan's gone up 2, Neymar's gone down 2, and then Cam with an absolutely fantastic start on those hard tyres. Oh, Neymar's in the wall. Big style there coming out of Paul Frere. Very lucky that didn't cause a retirement, so that is another place gained for Cam. He is flying on those tyres. Scuba again looking really close to Machero, and he's going to send one down the inside at the bus stop. That's extremely late on the brakes. Machero gave him room. Can Scuba get the cutback to work up to his advantage? A bit of wheel spin there coming out of the corner. I think that's just about cost him. Been plenty of battling behind, despite not being too many position changes inside the top 5 or 6 cars. And Recon's just checked out at the moment. A 1.5 second lead at the end of lap 1.
Absolutely disappeared at the front of the field. Scuba again trought to get this one up through Eau Rouge and Radion, but he had to back off the throttle midway through Radion because he was so close to the back of the Alfa Romeo. So is Scuba going to be compromised down the straight? It's going to move to the inside, but Machiro's not left a lot of room. That's very Albon and Perez reminiscent of 2019 as Scuba goes down the inside line on the Alfa Romeo, and I think he's just going to pull it off. No, he isn't. Machiro holds it around the outside. Machiro keeps in second place, but he's really having to defend from behind, and that's just allowing Recon to disappear off into the distance. Vettel trying to get involved as well. So is Siege. Scuba runs a little bit wide there through the hairpin, but just about gets away with it. Holds on to that third place. Maze is into the pit lane at the end of the first lap, and I think that carnage at the first corner was caused by Cam making it 5 wide into turn 1. There just wasn't enough room for everyone to go for the corner, and everyone just kind of ricocheted off one another. Cam also with a time penalty on the outside of Puwon, so got to look out for that one in this race. That is fairly easy to do, and Cam is almost nearly completely out of ERS at this point in the race, so he's really been pushing in these opening laps trying to make up places. He's made his way up to 8th, but from here on out it's going to be difficult for him to continue that charge forwards. But yeah, my word, Recon, what a lead he's got now, over 2 seconds at this point in the race, and Machiro now with a little bit of a breather from Scuba behind.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit tough maybe next time around because of the DRS, so needs to keep, I'd say, at least half a second gap at the top of Radium because the slipstream is so powerful, and the DRS being opening is so powerful because you lose so much more downforce, you lose so much more drag, I should say, at higher speeds. Like the force that's put on the car, if you double your speed, you get 4 times as much drag, so it has a much higher effect at high speeds, and you don't really get too many more higher speeds than when you're heading into Lacombe. So Scuba 6 tenths behind at the moment. And the last lap showed the importance of, if you have to lift off at the top of Radion, you lose a lot of momentum. He had to lose a lot of ERS to catch up back to Mashiro, but still wasn't able to get the position done. Now it'll be interesting to see if he can get a move done, as Honey Badger has had a huge moment at the top of the hill, and somehow that hasn't led to a retirement, as Mashiro and Scuba are battling side by side, and it's the same result as last time. The Alfa Romeo holds on.
Yeah, and I think on board, I didn't quite catch the end of that with Honey Badger, but he was running, I think, side by side with Graham going up Eau Rouge and Radion. So I wonder whether he maybe went for the move too early and it just resulted in contact, which, if you're going side by side through Eau Rouge and Radion, is almost inevitable with the angle of the corner. So Honey Badger again with another moment, and that's going to drop him down towards the back of the field then. He's now behind his teammate and down into 11th place. He's the last person that hasn't pitted yet. So Honey Badger still with a long way to go, as we've got Neymar and Faxan now battling for 12th place on the road, as Neymar breezes past Faxan after his first stop in this race to change the front wing. So Neymar up into 12th place and Faxand drops into 13th. At the front of the field, Recon continues to lead. It's 2 seconds over Mashiro. Mashiro holds the gap to Scuba at the time being, and you've got to say that Scuba maybe is set up for a better straight line speed, but Mashiro is faster in the middle part of the lap, because in the middle part of the lap, Mashiro seems to build quite a decent lead over the Red Bull.
Yeah, and again, we talked about it a lot in Hungary. The ERS could play a crucial part here. Scuba on 8% at the moment as they're heading towards bus stop. Mashiro was on about 45%. So even though the Red Bull's going to have the DRS and he decides, I'm fed up of being stuck in traffic, I can go faster here, he dives into the pits. Quite an early pit stop to what you would have expected at the end of lap 3. I was expecting the next lap to be the earliest we'd see most of the drivers coming in, maybe even the lap after. Medium tyres, he'll have no worries, they will get to the end. It's just whether he'll cost himself any pace here. We'll see where he comes out. We've got a fantastic battle going on though for 4th, 5th and 6th. It's Siege, Nathan and Cam. Nathan all over the back of Mercedes, and Cam might be trying to make this free wide, but he's just got no ERS once again, as Nathan just breezes past the Mercedes.
Yeah, Nathan did a really, really good job of saving up some ERS there. He had 80% coming out of the source, which meant he could just easily get that move done. So Nathan then making moves and is up into 4th place. Can he catch to the back of Vettel, who's a little bit detached from the back of Mashiro himself? So Nathan is now 3 of that battle. He's got some clean air. What is his pace like in that Ferrari? And now can Cam follow him through? Cam, in raw speed, looks fast, but like you say, with no ERS, it's just going to be so difficult for him to make moves. Maybe he'll have to try and undercut these guys, or maybe go longer and try and do the overcut on the guys in front. He's definitely got more pace than Siege at this point in the race. Seems to be struggling a little bit in that Mercedes. He had a good start to the race, had a good qualifying as well, but just doesn't quite have the same race pace as the drivers around him at this point in the race. Graham as well, again for the second race tonight, Graham is running all on his own at the moment in 7th place. There's no pressure from behind and is not attacking anyone in front, so he's just trying to bring that car to the end of the race. Tekken on the medium tyres, the only one still on the medium tyres that started on them. He's running down in 8th with a damaged front wing, so no one on that alternate strategy has been able to make it work. Tekken obviously struggling with that front wing damage, isn't going to have a lot of pace, so he's going to have to come in fairly soon to change that front wing. Do any of our leaders come into the pit lane at the end of lap 4? Recon stays out for another lap. Is Mashiro in? No, Mashiro doesn't react to Scuba. So Mashiro stays out, Vettel stays out, Nathan stays out, Siege stays out, Cam is the one into the pit lane. So still our top 5 deciding not to come in, and Cam now maybe giving himself the opportunity to undercut 2 drivers in front of him.
Yeah, maybe. Just looking at the time gaps between Scuba and Mashiro at the moment, it is 18.7 seconds as they're just heading around bus stop. It's not really a long pit lane here. It's only about an 18-second pit lane, so I can see why Mashiro stayed out on that lap. It's not like he was really losing any pace by the looks of things to Scuba. I'll just quickly get the sector times up, because the middle sector is when you'll really see the grip of the tyres, and it was Mashiro's fastest middle sector on that last lap with a 45.1, 9 thousandths of a second slower than Scuba. So it's not really like Scuba's got a tyre advantage at this point in the race, but he might struggle a bit further on, as Cam, on those fresh medium tyres, just caught out maybe by the lack of the grip on the top of Radion. He's out of the race.
Wow. That's very, very easy to do. We see that a lot, especially in the wet conditions. In the dry, it's not as common, but Cam, like I say, fresh out of the pit lane, or maybe some cold tyres that aren't fully up to pressure, and he spun the car completely. So Cam is now out of this race. What a shame for the McLaren man, who was working his way from the back of the field nicely, but he's completely out of it, and that takes a lot of pressure now off of Siege and Nathan in this race. They can focus forwards instead of having to look behind them at this point. Everyone's a little bit spaced out at the front of the field now. It's 2 by 2 by 2 2 seconds by 2 seconds at this point in the race. Mashiro is not losing pace to Recon in front, but at the same time he's not gaining either, and these two are pulling away from Vettel, who still runs in that 3rd place. It's all about now where Scuba ends up when these guys pit, and like you said, the medium tyres fresh out of the box don't seem to have a pace advantage, and this is what I mentioned earlier on, that the soft tyres, because there's so little tyre degradation around this track, the soft tyres do tend to be the better tyre.
Yeah, and I think we are now seeing pretty much every single soft runner come into the pits, and they haven't really got to worry about any teammates, so it's working out absolutely fine for them. Recon on a set of mediums. We'll be seeing Mashiro, Vettel, Nathan, Siege, and Legacy's actually decided to stay out an extra lap. I'm not sure whether he's going for a bit of a glory run here to try and take lead of the race. He's going to be pretty close to Recon on the exit, but I think the Red Bull is just about going to manage to hold on to the lead of this race. So Recon leading, Legacy now in second place. Mashiro's crashed it coming out the pit lane.
Oh!
And he's been disqualified.
Wow. That is a brutal penalty. Mashiro, yeah, disqualified in the exit for blocking. He doesn't even have any damage, and he's been disqualified from the session. What a heartbreak for Mashiro, who could have been, well, would have been on the podium yet again, and it's just fallen apart for Mashiro on the exit of the pit lane. What a disaster for the Alfa Romeo driver, and that is gifted at this point in the race Vettel the opportunity of being on the podium, but Nathan all of a sudden has caught to the back of him in the pit lane. So now we've got a real battle on for third place.
Yeah, definitely, and that's good news for Scuba, who, looking at the time gap, he's 3 seconds behind Recon. I think Mashiro would have been fine, whether he's just got a bit spooked by seeing a car ahead of him of Legacy, not realising he hadn't pitted, or he's clearly just got on the throttle a bit too hard coming out of the pit lane. It's a very tight pit lane exit, but it's not something you see often. It's not as difficult as some of the ones you see at, for example, Zandvoort, where it sort of comes out onto the racing line, and Brazil and Abu Dhabi, where you do have to have a bit of your wits around you to make sure you don't have a crash. But very strange indeed there from Mashiro out of the race, and you've got to say he's just going to look at that and think that is a very, very silly mistake to make. Big shock from the Alfa Romeo driver, who was showing absolutely fantastic pace. That's probably just handed any chance we saw of Recon not taking the victory. It's probably gone out the window now. Recon looking fairly comfortable, 3.6 seconds ahead of the next car. But yeah, Nathan versus Vettel could be an interesting battle, although Nathan does have a penalty, so that might just make Vettel think that I don't have to defend too hard for this one.
Yeah, maybe. And Siege at the moment is not quite within penalty range of Nathan, so that's Siege's his next task really for this race is to get within that 3-second gap of Nathan. But Siege himself has lost a bit of time in that pit lane as well. He's got a lot of ERS in reserve for Siege that he can use, a lot more than pretty much everyone in front of him on the field. So he has that advantage in hand, but he's not really using it at this point in the race. He's still nearly at 100% coming out of the source. Graham's still running on his own in this race. This man must be bored tonight. That's 2 races in a row where he's just been running around on his own like it's some sort of just time trial event. He's just been on his own completely. Fatsand's behind him, and Fatsand is just beating Legacy out of the pit lane. So Legacy's come out in 8th place on a fresh set of medium tyres. Can he maybe pass Fatsand down towards the source? Legacy's got some ERS in reserve. He's got the DRS as well. Fatsand is a little bit further ahead, but look at the straight line speed in that Renault. Can he get to the inside line before the corner? Yes, he can. And I think Fatsand decides against fighting that one because Legacy is on the fresher tyres, and Legacy is up into 7th place as Fatsand runs into the back of him in the second part of La Source, maybe caught out by the speed differential. All in a little bit wide there, Fuma Almadi from Legacy, so Fatsand's going to have a look down the inside into the next corner, but there's just not enough room to make the move down the inside of the corner. He's trying to make it round the outside of the next one, but he's just not quite got the grip. He's got to try and do the switchback, but cuts the corner. He gets the time penalty. He has the inside line for Puon, but Legacy has a grab run out of no name and holds on to the place, and again Fatsand into the back of the Renault, and this time round that puts Fatsand a little bit further back. So Legacy into 7th place on a fresh set of medium tyres. Will hold on to it for the time being.
Yeah, pretty good lap for the Renault drivers. Honey Badger, carbon copy of what his teammate did, manages to get past Neymar into Lacombe. It'll be interesting to see how it goes for these on the soft tyres, Honey Badger and Faxland, because they both had to pit extremely early on the mediums. There won't be any worries of punctures, but they might just struggle with the pace ever so slightly. So if Neymar could just try and stay in contact with Honey Badger, he might have a go at getting back to him. You've got Tekken currently in 11th. You'd imagine he'll be able to work his way up to the back of the Alpha Tauri and probably get ahead of him. And Recon seems to be doing just as well on these mediums as he was on the softs. He's now 5 seconds ahead of Scuba, who's 1.6 seconds ahead of Vettel, and Nathan just not able to get close enough at the moment. He's just staying within DRS range. Do get the feeling, though, if he wasn't in DRS range, we might have a bit of a copy of the Hungarian race, where he just seemed to drop back ever so slightly on those mediums.
Yeah, and it definitely is easier to stay in DRS range around this chat with how long these straights are. I'll tell you what though, Scuba's second place is under threat, with obviously him coming in a lot earlier than people around him. That was obviously meant for if he was trying to get ahead of Mashiro. Now Mashiro is no longer in this race, so he's now going to be under pressure from Vettel behind. Can Vettel close in enough by the end of this race to really mount a challenge? That's what's crucial in this one. I'll tell you what, Scuba must be thanking his lucky stars that Recon wasn't in this championship at the start, because my word, Recon is absolutely flying. A 43.8 I think he did on that last lap on a set of medium tyres. That is a cut and dry, a mile ahead of the rest of the field in terms of pace. So we could see a double Red Bull 1-2 tonight, but at the moment it's Still under question as to whether Scuba is going to finish this race in second place. He is going to struggle towards the end of the race on those medium tyres, but the good thing for Scuba at least is that he's got almost all of his ERS in reserve if he needs it.
Yeah, I think he's just being careful at the moment and probably not pushing those rears. Pushing those rears a bit too much. We said before, he looks as though he's pretty fast in a straight line, so whether that means he's got a bit less downforce, and you need quite a lot on the back of these cars to get that 900 plus brake horsepower shoved into the road. Honey Badger picks up another penalty as he's trying to close up onto the back of Faxland and Legacy. And I have a quick check of the penalties. That's actually 6 seconds now for Honey Badger and 9 seconds for Neymar, so that's going to prove really costly for both of them. Everyone else has got a penalty, has got 3 seconds. Further up the field, Siege and Graham just having very lonely races, like you said. It's been a bit of a... Given some of the performances we've seen by Graham, he looked fantastic in the race before the Esports Masters League at Silverstone, where he actually managed to get 2 podiums, I believe, that night. He's just not looked to have the same pace tonight for some reason. Doing a pretty clean job is what Graham always does. He keeps it nice and clean, doesn't seem to get involved in any trouble, just doesn't seem to have any pace. As further up the field, Nathan has managed to get his way past Vettel. He was a long way behind. I wonder if Vettel's just had a mini moment.
Maybe, or well, we've seen that Nathan's used a little bit of his ERS here, so I'm wondering whether he's just decided to burn quite a lot of it to get the move done. But yeah, I wasn't even looking at that. I thought Nathan was too far back from Vettel to make the move stick, and Vettel's, yeah, I don't know if he has made a mistake, because now all of a sudden Nathan's pulling away in the first part of the middle sector as well. So has Vettel maybe hit a wall somewhere and damaged his front wing ever so slightly, or has he just made a mistake somewhere and is just trying to recuperate? Because Nathan, all of a sudden, Nathan's just come alight.
Yeah, has he woke up all of a sudden? I'm not quite sure what's happened. He's absolutely flying all of a sudden. It's like him and Vettel have just swapped around, because the gaps to Scuba have as well. So whether Nathan is taking him a few laps to find what limits you can do on these tyres. He's 1 second up on his personal best coming through Sector 2. He is absolutely flying at this moment in time. And something's happened with Faxland. He's actually coming to the pits, I believe, for a second set of the soft tyres. So clearly not confident that those would get towards the end of the race after having to pit on lap 2.
Yeah, very, very clearly not confident with that, as Honey Badger's now caught the back of his teammate. So Honey Badger's not really going to struggle with the soft tyres to the end. So, but the problem with Honey Badger is he's got 2 penalties, so Legacy just needs to stick within range as Nathan. There's a 43.3. What a lap from Nathan. That was faster than Recon's, fast as that by at least half a second, as Honey Badger goes clean around the outside of Legacy at Blanchimont. Brilliant move from Honey Badger there. Gets up into 7th place. He's now got to try and gap Legacy by at least 6 seconds to hold on to that 7th place towards the end. Nathan wasn't quite able to get within DRS range of Scuba in front. I think he was using all of his ERS to try and pull that off, and it's not quite worked. And now Scuba can use his ERS to try and pull away again, but in the process, Nathan has dropped Vettel. What a lap from Nathan. Now he's got to try and maintain that speed, but that's going to be very difficult for him with no ERS. Yeah,
and so costly as well. He nearly got to within a second as he absolutely butchers the track limits there at Malmedy. That's definitely going to be a warning. He was about 1.1 seconds behind Scuba at the top of the hill at Radion, and Scuba just went into overtake just to, I think, cover off any potential moves from Nathan and just to stop him having DRS. And by the time they got to Lecombe, the Ferrari had lost half a second. So that is how costly it is. That is how crucial these hybrid elements are in Formula 1 since they got introduced in they got made bigger in 2014, because they did have the KERS, of course, a few years before. Honey Badger doing a good job on those tyres as well. Tekker's got ahead of Neighbours. We've had a spin, and that's the race leader, I think.
Yeah, he's dropped the car coming out of pull for air, and he's dropped it completely on his own, broken his front wing. My word, out of nowhere, he's been cruising at the front of the field, not really had any pressure at all in this race. Has looked cut and dry above the rest of the field, has dropped the car completely on his own, and that's given Scuba the race victory. And Recon is either, if he stays out, he's going to drop places. He's letting Nathan through. He's going to hold Vettel up. Is he going to come into the pit lane? I don't think it'd be worth him coming into the pits at this point. He's not. He's going to stay out for the final lap of the race, but he's going to drop behind Vettel and maybe behind Siege as well from a comfortable win. Scuba's been just gifted a race victory.
I don't know. All I can say is it's been a lot of concentration from Recon. He was under no pressure whatsoever. Whether he's got slightly distracted and just... I'm not even sure how he would have done that. Quite often you see drivers understeer off at that part of the circuit. As he now picks up a penalty, he should... Siege is going to get ahead of him. He should be fine to Graham, but he's got such a large amount of front wing damage. This DRS is going to help him on the back of Vettel as Vettel goes defensive. I don't really think he had any need to at that moment in time, because there's no way Recon's pulling anything off at the brakes at this moment in time. So yeah, inexplicable. Probably the closest thing we've seen to the famous Ayrton Senna crash at Monaco in 1988, where he was so far ahead. he just got distracted or something and then crashed into the wall. And Recon is going to be absolutely gutted. And Graham, if I was him, I'd get a bit of a move on here because he's definitely got a chance of getting into the top 5.
He really has here, because look at that. Siege is already through on Recon. Recon's lost about 5 seconds to Siege in the first half of this lap. So if Graham can get a move on, he could be within range. And Recon just understeering through Pooh on absolutely no front grip. And like I say, that must be the only reason he's spun. It's just a lack of concentration. It's so easy. If you dip a wheel into the gravel on the outside of Curve Paul Frere, it can just spit you round. Maybe he's just understeered clean into that wall and broken his front wing. And Graham is nearly there. Actually, I think Graham is going to get this. Look, it's only 3.5 seconds now. So Graham just needs to get within 3 seconds of Recon to get the places. Now we've got Honey Badger off the road as Legacy's through on him. And I think Neymar's just past Tekken, who's spun as well. So it's all kicking off on the final lap. But around the final corner, Scuba must have think that Christmas has come 2 days early. Scuba is going to cross the line and he picks up the second race victory of the evening. Nathan's going to cross the line second, but Vettel will get second on penalties. But Nathan will hold on to that third place in this race. Neymar's retired at Curve Paul Frere. Siege crosses the line in fourth. Recon will cross the line in fifth place, but Graham will get him on penalties. So Recon ends up actually letting him through, and Recon's just come to a stop and is going to do donuts before the line. So it's going to cost him even more places at this point in the race as he comes across the line. I don't think he's going to hold on because he had a penalty advantage over everyone behind him.
Oh,
Recon...
Honey Badger spun it.
Oh, is he spun? Yeah, he has out of the last corner. He's doing donuts now when he's dropped behind Tekken as well. So Honey Badger, another spin for him at the end of the race, and he's out of contention as well as Tekken's come to a stop. I don't know what on earth is happening at the end of this race, but Fatsan crosses the line in 9th and Tekken ends up not crossing the line in 10th place. Maze will be the last person to cross the line, and he might end up inside the top 10 in all of this carnage at the end of this race. But Scuba ends up with a race victory. Vettel and Nathan get on the podium, and Recon blows a race victory.
Yeah, you've summed it up perfectly there. Recon just... Quite a lot of drivers seem to struggle at the end of the race. I'm not quite sure what happened. I mean, as far as I'm aware, as far as I remember, the weather is fixed to dry, but it's almost like the game decided we'll just start shoving some random rain showers out there that only the drivers can see, because they all started losing it at the end. Inexplicably. You got to say, in quite a few cases, especially Recon's, under no pressure whatsoever, but Scuba... Fantastic job in the end to take that victory, and Mashiro's now probably watching that even more gutted about his mistake coming out of the pit lane, because that very well could have been his victory.
Yeah, definitely could. He would have been comfortably ahead of Scuba. Before that incident happened, Recon had over a 7-second lead. He was miles off into the distance and had no pressure. And he would have said Mashiro would have slotted right in the middle of that gap. So that could have been a race victory for him, but such a small mistake for Mashiro given the harshest of punishments. That is brutal, and he must be gutted with that. But here's your results then for round 14 of the season. Scuba picks up the race victory and continues to extend his championship lead to a point that's going to be difficult to recover from, because the closest person to him in the championship that's taken place tonight was Tekken, and he was only 11th in this race. So Scuba's going to have a massive championship lead heading into round 15. Vettel gets a podium ahead of Nathan as well, who gets his podium in this race as well. Siege ends up only 4th, a lonely race for him, a pretty lonely race for Graham as well, but he picks up P5. Recon, crashing with a lap and a half to go, ends up in 6th place. Legacy gets P7 ahead of his teammate Honey Badger, who ends up 8th. Fatsan 9th. Maze gets inside the top 10. Tekken, the last finisher, in 11th. Neymar retired on the last lap. Cam crashed at the top of Radion coming out the pit lane, and Mashiro disqualified for blocking the pit exit after some sort of spin on the exit of the pit lane after his pit stop. So a bit of a chaotic race to end the evening off, and Scuba is going to have almost an unassailable championship lead heading into the next 2 rounds.
Yeah, definitely. Just having a quick look at what the standings were before this race. So like you said, you've got Wesker and Perpetuum not there. Tekken not really threatening any of the top positions today. Graham's got a 5th position from this race, but he was quite a lot lower down the order. Cam only getting 1 podium. Maze not scoring loads of points. To Keeper absent. So many drivers having bad days today. Scuba, another double podium. He's looking so good at the moment. You've got to say, with 8 rounds to go, depending on if there's any absences, well, if he's attends every single round, I think he'll end up winning the championship now. Yeah, you've got to say, even if he just attends and doesn't really win any races from here on out, Scuba has an amazing opportunity of winning this championship, because, well, second to him in the championship after this round, you would imagine it's going to be, well, maybe either Graham or Tekken if they've managed to score enough points to get ahead of Perpetuum and Wesker at this point. But even so, if they do, coming into the next round, Scuba, if he finishes, well, 4th or 5th in every round to the end of the season, you've got to expect that the other drivers have got to win almost every single race. And with the amount of people we've seen winning so far this season, that is a really tall order. Yeah, definitely. And I think Recon summed it up in the YouTube chat, just put in, whoops. That was definitely a big whoop. And it just shows that, as a human, you sometimes need that bit of pressure behind you. If Scuba had been maybe 2 or 3 seconds behind him. It wouldn't surprise me if Recon hadn't made that mistake, but he's thinking, oh, this is nice and easy. Like you said, you just chuck a wheel on the dirt. The car's gone round before you've even realised what had happened, and he's like, oh my god, what on earth have I done here? He was actually trying to set the fastest lap, so yeah, he was just trying to keep himself entertained, and reminds me of Sebastian Vettel and his arguments with Rocky, his race engineer, when he was at Red Bull, because he was always told, do not go for the fastest lap. And Recon's really just shown there why sometimes it's probably not the best thing. He was going for the hat-trick. It's great to see. It's great to see that he was pushing towards the end of the race as well. But maybe he showed in that race that he didn't really need to push because he could have got the double, similar to what Perpetuum did a couple of rounds ago.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, it shows that people maybe need pressure to thrive, really. Some people thrive under pressure, some people throw it away under pressure. Recon maybe seems like one of these people that thrives under a little bit of pressure because out in front on his own, completely kind of threw it away at the end. But still a great debut from Recon to win the first race of his season as well, and to have such a dominant performance up until the 10th lap at Spa just goes to show how strong Recon is as a driver, and I'm sure he can still take away a lot of positives from that race. But that is where we're going to round off the stream today, guys. Before we actually finish off though, who is your driver of the day today, Luke?
Despite that crash at the end, I think there's only one person you can give it to. Recon showed fantastic pace to get into the top 10 on the alternate strategy in Hungary. A great win from him and a great pole position despite his spin at the end. Still a fantastic job. I think you could give it to either Red Bull driver today. They were the class of the field.
Yeah, they really, really were. Scuba, really, really consistent across both races, but like you say, I'm going to have to give it to Recon as well. Just the pace that he showed in those races was cut and dry, far above the rest of the drivers. So that was absolutely brilliant stuff in there, and I'm sure Scuba is going to be absolutely delighted with the championship lead he's going to have after these 2 rounds. He'll be smiling from ear to ear. And we head into Christmas in a couple of days' time, guys. So it is Christmas in 2 days. So Merry Christmas to everyone that is watching this stream, and I hope you have a brilliant Christmas. We obviously will not see you again until the start before Christmas, so there's no obviously league racing action on tomorrow on League Racing TV or on Friday, so have a good Christmas break, everybody. We'll be back next week on Wednesday on the 30th for rounds 15 and 16 of the season. We'll be heading to Italy and Singapore for the next 2 rounds of the season, and from myself and Lucas, a very, very Merry Christmas to everyone. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.